Joined now by the national sports editor of the Daily Hive and its offside sports vertical, the one and only Rob the Hockey Guy from Twitter, Rob Williams, back with Sekeres and Price. How are you?
Doing great, guys. Having fun going down memory lane here. All the Roberto
Indeed.
Luongo stories coming flying back here. It's a lot of fun.
What struck you this week?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the interview you guys had with Mike Gillis was absolutely fantastic, and I mean, every time we hear Gillis speak, I feel like we learn just a little bit more about that era. But yeah, you know what? I think that it's kind of I feel like Roberto Luongo going in the Ring of Honor, it's filled with controversy. I feel like we're right back, like we're right back in 2014 or right back in 2011. The debates come flying back. I was, I had a game with my men's league team last night, and the debate went into the dressing room about Luongo retired number or not. And then someone said, "Oh, if they retire his number, they should put McLean's number up there too." And then that set me off. And you know what I mean? Like, it's just like we're right back there.
What was the division in the room?
It's never easy with Roberto. Huh? There's always a something with Roberto.
Yeah.
How did the poll question land in the room? Not our poll question, but just the rafters or ring. What was the division?
It was split. You know what? It's
Yeah?
split. I mean, because you look at the numbers and they're obviously Hall of Fame worthy, but like, I think the thing with the Roberto Luongo is that for every big moment in the playoffs, there was like a soul crushing moment, right? Like, you've got the save against Sharp in game 7 and, against the Blackhawks, but you've also got, like, he gave up a goal in the last minute of that game. And how can you think about anything in 2011 without thinking about Boston? And he had like the great moments in at home in that finals, but then he had like the blowouts against the Bruins. So there's always something else. And I was trying to think about it, kind of this morning, like, what is like the moment where like it's just unequivocally great, like it was awesome the whole way through. And for me, it was probably his first season, 06-07. Everything was incredible that whole year. But of course, what do we remember about that year? Like the moment, and then because of Luongo probably bringing it up the most, is sitting on the toilet in overtime while his teammates are going out there. And then, of course, the game-winning goal, the series-winning goal, the goal that ends their series, is a soft shot from the blue line where Luongo's distracted, calling for a penalty with the referee. So it's just, it's just what an incredible career of just so many, the highs and the lows. There's so much drama, and it was so much fun. But it's kind of perfect now that we're still debating. It's still a debate. Even in retirement, he's still delivering drama for the fans of Vancouver.
Spot on, Rob. Absolutely 100% right. That, here we are. There was always a yeah, but, and we get to like really his final bow in Vancouver.
Still, yeah, but.
And there is still this swirl of controversy around. I'll remind you, he finally beats the Blackhawks after giving up the shorty in the final minute to go to overtime in game 7. He was pulled earlier in the series. He had to come back and regain the crease, in part because of Schneider's
He was a fallible everyman, right?
Yeah.
I think that was part of his allure too, is that as spectacular as he was, we also saw him as an everyman. I think that it was completely susceptible to errors and emotion.
Well, yeah, I mean, he evolved too, right? I mean, wouldn't it have been interesting to see, if Luongo had evolved sooner, if the Twitter account and the personality and all that had come out prior to that cup run? Like, I feel like that he had this persona before that cup run that maybe just kind of added pressure onto his shoulders, where I think when he was more comfortable about laughing at himself and having those moments later on in his career, that sort of took the pressure off a little bit. And because I mean, we have to be honest, like the pressure moments got to him, right? Like his worst moments were in those high pressure games. He had some great moments. I mean, like he won a gold medal, don't forget. He took them to game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. And like I said, he had some great games in that final, but it's just, there's always like you say, the but is always there with
He deserved a
Luongo.
redemption
Well-
arc the next year. The 11-12, he deserved a redemption arc, and they got maybe robbed of it with Daniel and all that stuff.
Yeah. I don't mean this. I don't mean to discredit those who came before him with the Vancouver Canucks, because the franchise was around for nearly 40 years and had a couple of good Stanley Cup playoff runs to the finals. But I almost feel like there are two chapters in the Vancouver Canucks history. One is pre-Roberto Luongo, where you get those two playoff runs, but you also, and you used the term yesterday with Gillis, Blake, what's going on the wacky West Coast there, where the Canucks are noted for things like the Bertuzzi incident, McSorley-Brashear, vote for Rory, and all these sort of like less serious things in terms of the NHL tapestry. Not that,
Less on ice.
yeah. Not necessarily competitiveness and winning. And boy, the road through the Stanley Cup to the Stanley Cup goes through Vancouver. To me, he sort of brought a competitiveness and a seriousness to the brand, to the market, to the organization that didn't necessarily exist before him, at least not in the same measure. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the duration of Luongo's time in Vancouver, the Canucks mattered, right? Like they were usually a playoff team, right? Like that, I think they missed the playoffs just once, and then in his final season as well.
Mm-hmm.
But they mattered, right? And there were they won playoff series, even getting to the second round before the cup run, President's trophies, like they were a team that mattered. I mean, there were other, the Lyndon Bure era obviously was a time where the Canucks were relevant as well, and Naslund, Bertuzzi, Morrison, of course. But that was when they took the next step and became a truly elite team, and that was with Luongo, and that was with his arrival that they became that. And before the Sedins and guys like Bieksa and Kessler, before they really became in the Sedins cases, good players to star players, in those other players' cases, developing into really good NHL players. Before that happened, it was Luongo backstopping them when they had, a mediocre or subpar team. Luongo was the one winning them a division title. Luongo was the one winning them a playoff series virtually solo. That he was the guy that kind of kicked it off and was their first superstar for that.
We
era.
also
and remember how much Hank and Danny praised Roberto for changing their mindset, getting them more competitive, and of course their careers flourished after Roberto came to town. Before, again, they were kind of an NHL novelty. Oh, these identical twins, and they're pretty good players. And then Roberto gets there, and they start winning, and suddenly it's like, whoa, these guys are league MVP level players.
Well, it was a piece that they didn't have yet in terms of a marquee goalie. Remember, we're coming out of Alex Auld seasons and that sort of stuff. And it was a time when we deified goalies a lot more than I think we do now. I think people recognize that guys like Thatcher Demko are a huge a bonus, an asset, but I don't think we make them the superstars that they used to be. The goalie was such a huge piece. If you had a real one, that was a superstar. And I don't know that we necessarily make goalie superstars anymore, because we've seen, 7 out of 10 goalies win a lot of Stanley Cups here in the last 10 years.
Guys, I was in university when they traded for Luongo, and I remember I actually interned at the Canucks for 4 months, and I remember the interview process to get that internship, and they had asked me, like, what do you think about their moves in the summer, right? Like, I guess trying to get a sense of like if I followed the team or whatnot.
Right.
And I responded like, well, it's great they finally got a goalie now. And I didn't realize that was like kind of a controversial take, I guess, inside the walls of Rogers Arena. And they were like, whoa, like hot take, right? But it really was true, right? Like we had years and years of Dan Cloutier, and then Auld had some good times there. But like that was the thing, like that the Canucks had years and years of really good teams, only to just get beat because they had terrible goaltending, and Luongo coming to town was like, hey, finally they fixed that spot. But I got the job anyways, so it seemed more. It was more controversial than I thought. Because for me, I was like, it was an obvious point. Like they finally got a goalie.
Do you remember who was interviewing you?
It was Rod Brathwaite.
Oh, Roddy.
Rod was my boss. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, Rod! What a gem he is. I can only imagine. Who is this whippersnapper not drinking the Dan Cloutier Kool-Aid? Number one, it's our poll question today. Will the Canucks, not should, but will the Canucks goalie ever wear number one again?
I think there will be. Yeah, I think that. I mean, we saw with Casey DeSmith, like number one was like that was his number, and I remember he was asked in training camp about it, and he basically hinted like, oh, geez, yeah, like I'm, of course I wasn't going to wear one because of Luongo. He didn't say it in exactly those many words, but that's what he meant. I mean, if it's not retired, it's fair game. I think that the time will pass and there'll be a goalie with, some sort of resume that wears one, and we'll roll in here and wear one. I think the only way that doesn't happen is if, I don't know, new management or something changes down the line and they decide to retire Roberto's number.
Possible?
Or the switcheroo, as Blake keeps talking about.
The switcheroo on the night of. But do you think like 5 years down the road they would elevate, they would upgrade a guy?
I don't think 5 years, maybe 10 years. I think maybe as time goes by, if you get a new management group, if I don't know, I don't think ownership is changing anytime soon, but I guess I look to what happened with Pavel Bure, and time passed. They overlooked him, right? Like they retired Linden, they retired Naslund, they didn't retire Bure until well into retirement for him. So I do think that feelings can change. It would seem unlikely here because some time has already passed, and you would think that, okay, this is the decision, but yeah, so I would consider that a long shot that we get his number retired now. But yeah, no, if it's not retired, it's fair game, and I think it should be fair game. Like if you're not retiring it, then yeah, give it to someone else. Maybe don't give it to someone like right now. Like if you're Casey DeSmith, like that was a good call not picking one, because why open that up? But if you're if they bring in I'm having trouble off the top of my head thinking of another really good number one in the league. But if you have a player or a goaltender that has starred in the league and wears one and comes to Vancouver, that player should be within their rights to wear one.
With Bure, I think prior to his induction to the Hockey Hall of Fame, which you're right was a catalyst, but one of a couple of catalysts, he asked out. He threatened not to play, and I think a lot of people inside the building looked at it and looked at who was in the rafters, who they knew was going in Hank and Danny, and said one of these things is not like the other. I think it was at the owner's behest, frankly, that Pavel Bure got his number retired, and I think that's what some have a lot of trouble with here is, okay, if Pavel Bure can ask out and get his number to the rafters after an election to the Hockey Hall of Fame, how come the same standard does not apply to Roberto?
I've got 4 number ones in the league right now.
That's it?
That's it.
Wow.
Keith Kincaid, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, Jeremy Swayman would be the most pedigreed, I would think, and Lucas Dostal and
wow.
Yeah, crazy.
Gone out of style a little bit, hasn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
It used to be a go-to number, but yeah, I don't know. I just I think with Bure, Bure had to mend some fences. I think, and I think a lot of fans throughout the 2000s were not really Bure guys. Like it's not like people were banging down the door like Bure's number has to be retired. Like it eventually came to that, but it wasn't like before he went in the Hall of Fame. That wasn't a huge talking point in the city because it was a split thing, and people forget that like when Luongo was traded, he came back, he was beloved. When Bure was traded, he was hated, right? Like people were really mad about Bure. I mean, he's not only demanded a trade, he sat out. Like he refused to play while under contract. People forget about that, but he mended fences, and I think it's fantastic that they've brought these guys back in, and you think about I think about growing up in Vancouver, being a Canucks fan in the '90s. Like there wasn't a history really to look back on and to be proud of, and I think that Canucks fans now, they have that. Like they have these legends, they have these like Hall of Fame players that they can look back onto and be like, those were players that played in a Canucks jersey, and I think that's pretty cool.
Well, and here's the other thing on Bure, Rob. If they win Game 7 in 2011, I'm not going to say people forget about Pavel Bure, because how can you forget about a talent that magnificent and a guy who was just that eye-popping the way he played the game? But suddenly, everyone from 2011, to your point, gets further extended legendary status here. And I'm not sure the history pre that team gets quite as lionized as we sit here today. Like I think the 94 guys continue to get a whole lot of run in this town because 2011 fell a game short. And for some 94 guys, they're okay moving on. They've talked a lot about that team and that run. And for other 94 guys, it's kind of like one of their calling cards, one of their signatures as they walk around town with Canucks fans. So, look, as we have always said, you're allowed to celebrate your history however you so choose as an organization. You would hope that there is a understanding of the fan base and those outside the building and bringing their cares and considerations into the process as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think it really is interesting to compare the 94 team and the 2011 team, because there's so many similarities in some ways, because they both went to Game 7. There were riots after both of them. There were, they needed, they had the dramatic Game 7 win in the first round. They had this amazing run through the second and third rounds. So it's very similar for both of them. Even you've got Greg Adams sent them to the final in '94. You've got Kevin Bieksa sent them to the final in 2011. So many similarities in there. But the one thing that's just different is that in the final, the Canucks' best players came up big, and they were the underdog, and they fought back down from 3-1 to force Game 7 and put a great effort in that final game, and just came up just so close, and did it on the road, right? In Madison Square Garden. It's just the opposite for that 2011 team, because they were the favorite. It was supposed to be their year. They had the series lead, and their stars did not have great series. We always talk about Luongo in that series, but the Sedins did not have a great series in 2011, right? Like Kessler did not have a great series in that final. Whereas when you look back at the Canucks, like you look back at like Trevor Linden, like scoring 2 goals in Game 7. You look at Kirk McLean standing on his head in Game 1 and just absolutely stealing a game in Madison Square Garden. So it's those vibes, right? It's really, I think that's the only difference between 2011 and 94 and we were able to look back at 94 for many years, even like the years close to it afterwards, and fans could be proud of that run. And I think 2011, everyone was kind of ashamed, and it was just such a sore spot because it was the one that got away.
Yeah. All that said, he gets if Luongo gets a 2-0 shutout win in game number 7,
he could very well win the Conn Smythe.
He might have been the Conn Smythe.
No, it's been said.
It would have changed everything, though, right? Like absolutely everything changes. There's probably there's probably like 5 retired numbers from that team up at the rafters.
Yeah, Luongo Boulevard.
I think Roberto ends his career as a Canuck, or at least spends a lot more time here than he winds up doing. I think Corey Schneider gets traded early and becomes probably a franchise goaltender for somebody sooner than he became. No, I mean to play that butterfly flaps its wings game, and everything that changes if they win that Game 7. Rob, great fun, great insight. Appreciate the conversation. Till next week.
Thanks, guys.
This clip brought to you by Betway. Must be 19 plus to play. Please play responsibly.